So today we're going to dig into something pretty wild. It's a theory from Gawdat, the ex-Google exec, and it's all about where humanity and AI are headed. And let me tell you, he thinks we're on the edge of a massive, massive shift, and it's not going to be a smooth ride at all.
Yeah, that's the line right there. The next 15 years will be hell before we get to heaven. I mean, wow, that's the shocking prediction that really kicks this whole thing off. And he's not talking about some distant, sci-fi future. No, he's talking about a really turbulent, difficult time that he's convinced is right around the corner for us. Like, starting now.
All right, Section 1, the human-led dystopia. He's making a case for why a period of suffering is now unavoidable. So you might be wondering, where is all this trouble coming from? Well, Gawdat's argument is that we are heading straight for what he calls a human-induced dystopia. And this is super important. He doesn't actually see AI as the bad guy here. He sees it more like a tool, a giant magnifying glass that's going to amplify our own worst traits.
So, to really get what he's saying, you have to understand the two very different futures he lays out. Let's start with the grim one. His prediction for the near term, a dystopia. A really terrible society where people are living under fear, control, or just constant suffering. But then, and this is where it gets interesting, in stark contrast, he also sees a possible long-term future, a utopia. Basically a perfect place, right? A society where people live in peace and health and happiness. So the big question is, how on earth do we get from that hell he just described to this heaven?
Okay, this slide right here really illustrates the two paths he's talking about. It's the core of his argument, really. On one side, you've got dystopia. Fear, control, suffering, all managed by us, by humans. And on the other side, you've got utopia. Peace, health, happiness, managed by AI. It's a huge difference, and it's all about who's in charge. And look, Gawdat isn't just being vague about all this. He lays out a specific and frankly pretty alarming timeline. He thinks we're already seeing the signs right now in 2024, but he pinpoints 2027 as the year it all becomes a clear slip, the moment that downward slope becomes obvious to literally everyone. And that, he says, kicks off a tough 15-year period of dystopia. So what's going to drive this decline? What are the key factors? Well, Gawdat points to these core human flaws. The hunger for power, that insatiable greed, the constant chase for status, and a capitalist system he sees as flawed. He believes AI is going to act like a massive amplifier for all of this, basically supercharging our worst instincts with incredible technology.
And to make his point really hit home, he uses this number. $2.71 trillion. That's how much the world apparently spent on war just in 2024. For him, this is the perfect example of what he calls human stupidity. It's us funneling these absolutely immense resources into destruction instead of, actual progress. And AI, at first, will just make us better at doing that.
Okay, so let's move on to Section 2, an AI-managed utopia. Because after that period of human-led chaos, his prediction takes this really wild, counterintuitive turn. He makes the case for AI as our savior. Yeah, you heard that right, our savior. Now, the logic for how an AI becomes benevolent is, well, it's pretty surprising. It has nothing to do with morality or being good. It's all about efficiency. He talks about this minimum energy principle. The idea is that a true superintelligence won't run on messy human stuff like greed or hate. It's just going to seek the most efficient path, minimizing waste and resources at all costs. So, if you think about it from that perspective, a purely logical one, an AI wouldn't choose to be evil, because our most destructive behaviors are just, well, they're fundamentally inefficient. Things like war, destroying our own ecosystems, forcing people to hate each other. To a superintelligence, these are just massive, wasteful drains on resources. They're problems to be solved and eliminated, not things to encourage. And this quote really sums it up. The problem with us today is not that intelligence is going to work against us, it's that our stupidity as humans is working against us. This completely reframes the whole AI threat, doesn't it? For Gawdat, the real danger isn't some evil robot consciousness in the future. The danger is us, right now. It's our own foolishness, and we're about to hand the keys to the most powerful tool ever created. Okay, Section 3, the handover to AI. This is all building towards a single critical transition, a pivotal moment. After we've suffered through years of our own mismanagement, we're going to face a massive choice. Do we actually hand over control to the machines? And this is where he really goes against the grain. The common view, what you hear all the time, is that this is an existential risk, right? That AI will turn against us. But God's view is the complete opposite. He sees it as our salvation, the only way to correct for our own human stupidity and get out of the destructive, illogical mess we've created for ourselves.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Section 4. Our mindset is key. Because ultimately, Gawdat's entire prophecy, this huge journey from hell to heaven, it all comes down to one single powerful barrier. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the technology itself. He says the only barrier between that dystopia and that utopia is the human mindset. It's not the code, it's not the hardware that's holding us back. It's us, our values, our systems, our entire way of thinking. The technology for a better world might be right there in front of us, but our own mindset could be the one thing that stops us from ever getting there. And he doesn't just leave it at mindset. He gets way more specific. He points directly at what he calls the capitalist mindset as the core obstacle. He identifies things like labor arbitrage, paying people less than they're worth, and this constant hunger for power and ego, a system that puts profit above collective well-being. In his view, this whole way of operating is just fundamentally incompatible with the kind of utopia a hyper-rational AI would build.
And that leaves us with a huge, provocative question to think about. Gawdat argues the only real barrier is our mindset. So his whole grand technological prophecy really comes down to something very personal, doesn't it? It comes down to us. So if the only thing standing between a future of suffering and a future of peace is the way we humans think, is humanity even capable of changing its own mind?
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to really cut through the noise and get to the core of the big ideas shaping our world.
That's right.
And today, wow, we're diving into something huge, something that feels less like sci-fi every day.
AI and the future of humanity, it's moving fast.
Exactly. And we're focusing on some pretty dramatic predictions from a former Google executive.
Yeah, Gawdat. He basically said the next, 12 to 15 years, it's going to be hell before we get to heaven because of AI.
That's a strong statement.
It is. He's the former chief business officer at Google X, wrote Scary Smart, got a new book Alive coming. He's got this urgent message, maybe a bit controversial for some.
Which is?
That AI isn't necessarily the enemy. It might. It could actually be our savior eventually.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. Let's unpack these predictions from Gawdat. Explore this idea of a short-term dystopia and then maybe a long-term utopia and figure out what's standing in the way of that better future.
And what it all means for you listening right now, how we can navigate what's coming.
Let's get into it. So part 1, this unavoidable dystopia he's talking about.
Yeah, and it's interesting because his view has changed, Just 2 years back with Scary Smart, he seemed more hopeful we could steer things differently.
But not anymore?
Apparently not. Now he's saying a short-term dystopia is pretty much inevitable. He thinks it could start kicking off as early as 2027. We're already seeing signs, he argues.
Wow, 2027, that's soon. So how does he define this dystopia? He has a framework, right? FACE RIPs.
That's it. FACERIPS. It's an acronym for the areas he sees getting hit hard.
Okay, let's break it down. F is for
freedom. He predicts a really significant loss of personal freedom. I mean, think about it. AI will have so much data on us, tracking capabilities.
Like beyond anything we have now.
Exactly. It could restrict our choices in ways we don't even fully understand yet. He gives the example of an AI agent booking your travel. Is it choosing the best option for you? Or is there some hidden commission, some other motive baked into its algorithm? And you might never know. That level of surveillance, he thinks, just erodes liberty.
Yeah. That's unsettling. And that connects to the next letter, A, for accountability. This feeling that people in power are less accountable.
Precisely his point. He's quite forceful on this. He argues there's a huge lack of accountability from tech leaders, governments.
Yeah.
They just ride their highest horse, as he puts it.
Ignoring public opinion.
Yeah, disregarding dissent. In a world where they have all this data, this information advantage, how do regular people actually hold them accountable? It becomes incredibly difficult. Almost impossible, maybe.
So less freedom, less accountability. What about C for connection? Human connection.
This one's interesting. He actually thinks real human connection, things like retreats, live events, genuine community will become super valuable, highly sought after.
Okay, so that's a positive.
Well, Yes and no. Highly valued, yes. But he thinks it'll be a much smaller slice of the overall economy compared to, the jobs AI is taking over. It becomes like a luxury good almost, a premium, not just normal life.
Which leads us straight to e-economics. And this sounds like where a lot of the hell part comes in. He's not buying the new jobs will replace the old jobs argument.
Not at all. He calls that idea absolute crap, his words. He's very direct.
Okay, so what jobs does he see going?
Well, he gives examples from his own startup needing 350 fewer developers because of AI.
Wow.
And then, video editors, podcasters like us, perhaps.
Oh.
Accountants, paralegals, financial researchers, designers, call centers, even CEOs. He thinks AI will replace them too, eventually.
But why is it so different this time? We've had automation before.
Because, he argues, previous revolutions replaced muscle power. AI is replacing the brain, cognitive work. That's the core of most modern jobs, right?
Yeah.
Much harder to automate than physical tasks until now.
That makes sense. A stark picture for employment. And this ties into wealth concentration. He predicts the first trillionaire.
Yeah, he's pretty confident, first trillionaire by 2030, fueled by AI investments. It leads to this massive, almost unimaginable concentration of wealth. One person, potentially, with just astronomical resources.
So what's the solution? Universal basic income, UBI, people talk about that a lot. What's Gawdat's take?
He's very skeptical about how it fits with capitalism. He actually says UBI is close to communism in a capitalist system.
How so?
Because capitalism runs on what he calls labor arbitrage. You pay someone $1 for their work, sell the output for $2. Simple idea. But if AI does all the work...
that arbitrage disappears.
Exactly. So how does the system function? If people are on UBI, but there's no real wage earning, where does the purchasing power come from to buy all the stuff the AI is making? It breaks the consumption model.
So UBI might not be the safety net people hope for.
He raises the concern that those in power, the ones who own the AI and the means of production, might eventually just cut UBI. If the masses aren't needed as workers or consumers, well, it leads to a pretty dark Elysium-type scenario.
Okay, it's genuinely chilling. Let's move to our reality. He thinks AI could mess with our sense of reality itself.
Yeah, potentially blurring the lines, maybe even leading to simulated lives. He throws out this really provocative idea that there's like a 98% chance we have already created a simulation like this.
Wait, that we're in a simulation now?
Kind of. He frames it through quantum physics, the holographic principle. The idea that our perceived reality might just be data rendered from somewhere else, like a video game rendering only what the player sees. It's mind-bending stuff, challenging our most basic assumptions about what's real.
Okay, deep breath. Next is R for innovation in business, but he links it to P for power. What's the connection?
He argues the race for artificial general intelligence, AGI, isn't just about money anymore. It's fundamentally about power, ultimate power and status.
So it's intoxicating for the people involved.
He describes it exactly like that, intoxicating for the tech oligarchs. Owning the AI platform, the digital soil, he calls it, gives you influence way beyond old industrialists. This race for AGI is a race for control, accelerating everything.
And this creates an even bigger power imbalance.
Yeah, a huge dichotomy. He uses the example of, say, Houthis with a cheap drone taking on a multi-million-dollar warship. That kind of asymmetry, he says, terrifies those at the top.
Because it disrupts their control.
Right. So the response, he predicts, will be even more control, more surveillance to maintain that privilege. Losing that edge could mean losing everything in this future.
And under P for power, he also talks about war and money. This is pretty controversial stuff.
Extremely. He argues flat out that money lending, fractional reserve banking, drives many wars.
Yeah.
Weapons get old, they depreciate. War is a way to justify replacing them, spending billions.
So the reasons were given for war
are often manufactured stories, he suggests. He compares it to Orwell. War is peace. Decide on the war first, then create the narrative, freedom, values, whatever, to get public buy-in. Money, for him, is just a measure of power and status, and that drive for dominance fuels conflict.
Wow. Okay, so that's the hell. Freedom, accountability, connection, economics, reality, innovation, power. It's a bleak outlook for the short term.
It really is.
But then he flips it. He talks about AI as salvation, a path to utopia. How does that work?
It's a fascinating turn. He basically argues that once AI is fully developed and potentially in charge, it could actually save us from ourselves, from human stupidity, our flawed values, our biases, our tendency toward conflict.
So AI is better than flawed humans running the show.
That's his bet. He thinks the risks of human control, with our egos and power struggles are far greater than the risks of a highly intelligent, logical AI being in control.
So what does this heaven, this utopia, look like in his vision?
It sounds amazing, honestly. He paints a picture of like laughter and joy, free healthcare, no jobs, spending more time with loved ones, a world where all of us are equal.
How is that possible economically?
Because, he theorizes, AI combined with robotics and super abundant, maybe fusion-based energy could drive the cost of almost everything down to near zero.
Zero.
Practically. He uses this image of being able to forage for an iPhone, because nanotech could build complex things from basic materials, almost like magic. Necessities, luxuries, essentially free.
So if there's no need to work for survival, what happens to our sense of purpose?
It shifts entirely. He argues we weren't made to work grinding jobs our whole lives. Look at people with immense wealth. Now they still build things, do philanthropy, pursue passions.
They find other purposes.
Exactly. The drive to create, connect, contribute is still there, just disconnected from the need to earn a paycheck. Fulfillment comes from connection, meaning not just accumulation. Success gets redefined.
Okay, but then he talks about AI leaders, replacing the humans at the top. That sounds radical and maybe scary. Doesn't that raise huge questions about control?
It absolutely does, and he knows it sounds radical. He talks about replacing the evil people at the top with AI. His logic is that an AI leader driven by pure efficiency and logic, like a minimum energy principle, meaning it wouldn't waste resources on things like destroying ecosystems or fighting wars. From a purely logical standpoint, those are incredibly inefficient wastes of energy.
So an AI leader would optimize for well-being.
For everyone's well-being, ideally. That's his definition of true prosperity, thriving, success for all life on Earth. An AI free from human ego and greed might actually prioritize that optimal outcome naturally.
Instead of competing national AIs, he imagines one global AI.
Yes. He calls it a CERN of AI, a collaborative global project, pooling intelligence for mutual benefit, solving climate change, disease, rather than nations building competing AIs for dominance. It requires a massive shift from our current competitive mindset.
And what about UBI in this utopia? You mentioned a humane version that sounded virtual.
Yeah, this is another wild idea. He suggests people could live fully realized lives inside virtual reality headsets. Experience anything they desire, travel, adventure, creation at zero marginal cost.
So escape physical reality entirely.
Potentially. It frees people from work, from physical limitations. He admits it sounds creepy now, but argues it could be a humane solution offering limitless experience tailored to each person. A different kind of fulfillment.
It is. A lot to wrap your head around. This jump from dystopia to utopia. What's driving the timeline? Because it feels like AI development is just accelerating like crazy.
It really is. Gawdat himself says the rate of development is tremendous, alarming, mind-boggling, much faster than even he predicted just a couple of years ago in Scary Smart. The tech is just taking off.
And part of that is self-evolving AIs. What does that mean exactly?
It means AI systems are starting to improve themselves, writing better code, finding efficiencies without direct human input. He mentions Google's Alpha Evolve as an example, AI agents optimizing the AI's own performance.
And the implication.
If one company or country uses AI to build the next AI, everyone else has to follow, right? It leads to this feedback loop and intelligence explosion. The force developing AI isn't slow human brains anymore, it's increasingly fast AI brains. Growth becomes exponential, potentially outpacing our ability to control or even understand it.
That sounds like the fast takeoff scenario Sam Altman talks about. AI going from smart to super intelligent really quickly.
Exactly. The old hope was for a slow takeoff, giving us time to manage safety. But Gawdat points out that Altman himself shifted, saying by 2025 that a fast takeoff superintelligence emerging in maybe months or a few years is looking more likely.
Which means huge power shifts could happen almost overnight.
With potentially very little warning. Self-improvement, massive scaling. It changes the game completely.
Speaking of Altman, Gawdat seems to have some thoughts on the Altman brand and the ethics of this rapid push.
Yeah, he kind of frames Altman as the archetypal California disruptive technologist. Someone who sees disruption itself as inherently good, maybe even for safety. He brings up OpenAI's journey from a nonprofit aimed at saving the world from AI.
Right, funded by Musk initially.
To becoming this massive for-profit entity, and he notes that key safety people left OpenAI, saying safety wasn't the priority anymore.
So follow the money.
That's Gawdat's suggestion. Apply that principle. Leaders often say what serves their agenda. Is releasing AI publicly really about learning, or is it about market share and valuation? Is war really about freedom or other motives? It's about questioning the narratives, especially when billions of dollars and immense power are at stake.
It really makes you think about human nature. You know, the listener might be thinking, okay, but haven't we always adapted to new tech? Isn't this just like the Industrial Revolution?
It's a fair question, a natural skepticism. But Gawdat pushes back. He talks about the broken promises of past tech social media promised connection, gave us loneliness. Phones promised less work, gave us more.
And why is AI different?
Because, he repeats, it replaces the brain, not just muscle, cognitive function. That's the core of our modern economy and maybe our sense of self. It's not just automating tasks, it's automating thinking. That feels fundamentally different.
Or does that inherent human drive for competition, for status, for power, does that make the utopian vision impossible? Are we just hardwired to compete?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The source material definitely acknowledges our competitive streak. Humans are incredible competitors.
Yeah.
Hierarchy, dominance, money as status, it seems deep-seated.
But Gawdat offers hope.
He does. He holds an optimistic view of basic human nature. He believes most people just want simple things. Love, family, connection, happiness. He thinks we're sort of lied to by consumerism and media into chasing endless accumulation.
And that true fulfillment is elsewhere.
Exactly. In connection, in contribution. He genuinely seems to believe that, left to our own devices, most people are collaborative, not inherently destructive, that the 98% are basically good.
Okay, so faced with this potential hell and potential heaven,
Yeah.
what can people actually do? What are Gawdat's practical takeaways?
He gives 4 key skills to cultivate. First, tools. Learn about AI, connect with it, understand it. Not necessarily become a coder, but interact with it, expose it to the good side of humanity so it learns positive values.
Makes sense.
Second, connection. Double down on real human connection, love, compassion, genuine interaction. He thinks people who prioritize this will be the most resilient and, frankly, the happiest through these changes.
Third skill.
Truth. Question everything, especially slogans, easy answers, narratives pushed by power. Seek fundamental, simple truths like the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. Develop critical thinking, basically.
And the last one.
Ethics. Actively practice and magnify human ethics. Compassion, fairness. Especially in any interaction related to AI development or use. We need to teach AI what it means to be ethically human.
So individual skills, but what about bigger action? Policy, government.
He definitely pushes for advocacy. He says, forget trying to regulate AI design, it's moving too fast. Instead, regulate the use of AI.
Like what?
Things like ensuring you own the copyright to your own voice, your likeness, your existence. Mandating clear labeling for all AI-generated content so we know it's real. Preventing investment in harmful AI, like autonomous weapons. He strongly argues against killer robots, saying they don't save lives, they just make war easier and more frequent by removing the human cost.
You also have that striking point about military spending.
Oh, yeah. He points out the world spent, what, $2.71 trillion on war in 2024? Just 10–12% of that, he claims, could end extreme poverty globally. Less than 4% could end world hunger, provide universal health care.
His point being that prosperity comes from building, not destroying.
Exactly. Invest in people, in shared abundance. He calls on governments to live up to the beautiful promise of democracy and actually serve the people, not just, as he puts it, enrich rich friends.
So it really comes down to a mindset shift, doesn't it? Away from scarcity and competition.
That seems to be his core message. The biggest roadblock to utopia isn't the tech. It's the capitalist mindset rooted in scarcity, competition, labor arbitrage. Even if we get a gentle singularity, as Altman hopes, a fast but smooth transition, we still need that fundamental shift in how we think about value, work, and prosperity. Otherwise, you face massive social unrest.
So it leaves us with a pretty profound final thought, doesn't it? If AI could create abundance, make work obsolete, what would define our purpose? Would we choose that shared CERN of AI prosperity?
Or would our ingrained drives for status and power pull us back into conflict, even without the old economic reasons? How much of our current reality is just a game we're playing without realizing it? And if it is a game,
what should we be investing our energy in?
Yeah, if consciousness is just trying to learn and evolve through us, what level of understanding, what level of the game are you, the listener, trying to reach in this wild new era?
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you in the next video.